The World Bank has frozen 750 million USD that was meant to supplement part of our 2025-2026 budget. And the reason why we have not received these funds is because we as a country have failed to implement certain reforms that were mandatory before we received these funds. And it's political. It's political. In fact, currently, the CS for Treasury was talking about how there's a budget deficit. There's a budget deficit for 97 billion Kenyan shillings, which is an equivalent of the 750 million USD. Because this is money that they had already planned for in the 2025-2026 budget. The reason why I am saying it's political is because at the center of it is the conflict of interest bill. Now, there's this bill that was introduced back in 2023, and it was meant to uphold integrity and stop corruption, if not reduce corruption amongst public officials. Now, this bill was tabled in Parliament, and there were certain recommendations that were to be there, that we as a country, we were to prove that we are committing towards upholding integrity and accountability and transparency amongst our leaders, against public officials. Now, earlier on during the year, that is around April, May, this conflict of interest bill was tabled to Parliament. They looked at it, they approved it, they took it to the Senate for approval. The Senate also approved it. It was then taken to the President for signing, but it was never signed. The Office of the President noticed that it was too diluted to uphold integrity, to seal the loopholes that existed there that could have easily been exploited by public officials. So the bill was then taken back to Parliament with certain recommendations. In fact, some of those recommendations, or some of the contentious issues that were identified by the Office of the President include: 1, the bill did not allow public officials to disclose the gifts that they received from family members. Why did they not want to disclose that? Yet it was part of the bill. It was part of this bill originally. The other one was, there is this defense known as the in good faith defense, that anyone who was involved in a conflict of interest matter could easily use to evade paying any penalties in good faith. The other one was, apart from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, there were to be other reporting authorities that were to have the power to look into such issues that regard the conflict of interest, which actually contradicts the Constitution, that only the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission can look into such matters and apply the law. There are also other issues regarding definitions. You see, we've talked about public officials declaring the gifts that they have received from family members. What's the definition of family? What's the definition of relative? Does it mainly include somebody who is related by blood to you? Can it accommodate not only the nuclear family, but also the extended family? Do sisters-in-law qualify? Do cousins of cousins of cousins qualify? So those were some of the issues that were identified there. So this bill was then taken back to the National Assembly. It was discussed. Some of the recommendations from the Office of the President include: 1, state officials were to disclose not only the gifts that they received, but the gifts that their family members also received. Their children and their spouses were also to declare the same. The other one was that there were to be regular wealth declarations, that you just can't suddenly be an overnight billionaire with your modest salary. You have to explain where you got your source of wealth, and it has to be declared on a regular basis. The other controversial one that I think had more weight was that there was a clause that was preventing public officials from doing business with state institutions. Think about it, that if you work in the Ministry for Health, for example, you're a state official there, and you know very well that we need a tender to supply, let's say, masks, and you know it's a lucrative tender, and you have this information. Can't you use this insider information to influence a tender that you can get, or you or your family member or your friends and relatives can easily get, and you just split the money. So those were some of the issues that you cannot do business with the government. You cannot do business with the institutions that you work with. These recommendations were approved by the National Assembly. It was then taken to the Senate so that they can have a look at it, approve it, then take it to the President for signing so that we can receive these funds that can then be used for our budget. Till to date, we are in July, it has never been approved. And this is one of the reasons as to why we haven't received these funds. In fact, this is what the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, that is Mr. Mbadi, had to say back in June, that the World Bank funding appears to have been pushed to July because critical laws were tied to its release, were delayed. The conflict of interest bill was pivotal, and once resolved, there wasn't enough time to present it to the board. We are now facing a 97 billion shortfall that I hadn't anticipated. So why would the World Bank want to impose such reforms? It's because it's in their best interest that the funds that they loan us are paid back. Remember, this is a loan. Plus, they're coming up with these conditionalities because they've noticed something, that a lot of money is being lost to public officials and state officers. There have been cases of corruption, especially amongst members of parliament, amongst governors, where they embezzled such funds. And all these reforms are meant to ensure strict accountability. Apart from the conflict of interest bill, which has not yet been signed by the Senate, so why would they not sign it? Yet it's in our best interest as a country. There were also other concerns, that other reforms that they wanted us to have. One of them is that we should have a single bank account, that Treasury should have one account for all the public finances so that it can be easy to track where has the money gone to. Think of it this way, that if we have one account that receives all the funds, and from this account is where money is withdrawn, it makes it easy for accountability. It makes it easy to even try to reconcile these accounts and say, okay, the funds that we received came here, they then went to this county government, to this county government, and to this other county government. Now, this is in line with what some of the concerns that the Auditor General had just the other day, where there was this report that was done for the year 2023-2024, that is last year. A citizen alone had received around 100.8 billion Kenyan shillings. But 44.8 billion shillings went missing. These funds were diverted to unauthorized accounts. Now think of it this way. If we just had one account, and there are certain processes in place that must be followed before these funds go to other accounts, wouldn't it be easier? Again, just the other day, the controller of budget, the one who approves flow of funds, was talking about how several county governments are operating illegal bank accounts. In fact, at least 11 counties are operating more than 100 bank accounts each in a widespread violation of the public finance laws. The counties with the highest number of accounts are Nakuru, Baringo, Machakos, Embu, all running over 200 accounts each. Why would one county government have more than 200 bank accounts? The governor for the central bank was summoned before the Senate to explain all this. And this is what he had to say: that there is lack of a direct mandate by CBK to compel county governments to close unauthorized accounts. So he's saying that his office doesn't have the right to streamline the account opening process, the account closure process. So there are loopholes that county governments are exploiting, like opening unauthorized bank accounts to, of course, embezzle funds. These are some of the concerns that the World Bank wants to see us commit to tackling before they give us these funds. Currently, we have a budget deficit, and the CS for Treasury is having a hard time because now he has to find an alternative source of funding. The World Bank has not given us these funds. The IMF have not given us these funds. In fact, they were to give us some funds last year, but because we failed to pass the Finance Bill 2024, there were certain clauses in that Finance Bill, like introducing more taxes to basic items. So there were those issues, but then there was political pressure. Then the Finance Bill 2024 did not go through. So we did not receive the 9th round of funding from the IMF. The World Bank now has not given us these funds. The alternative source of funds can be commercial loans. So we are talking about Eurobonds, even domestic bonds, and they are expensive. They are more expensive than us receiving funds from the World Bank. Plus, they are more short to medium term, unlike the loans that we get from the World Bank. There's that. And plus, there's the benefit of these reforms that the World Bank is trying to recommend to us. So you can see that in as much as they are giving us funds, they also want to see institutional changes. They want to see us commit to good governance. The alternative would be for the government to cut down on expenditure. Just the other day, the CS was talking about how unsustainable it is for us as a country to continue funding the free education model. Not that they're getting rid of it, but it's not possible to fund it like it used to be funded before. So if they were to go this route, certain sectors have to have a budget cut. You can see that it's a bittersweet pill, because we must have these reforms to receive these funds, which is a good thing for the country. But then again, the ones who are supposed to uphold integrity don't want to pass this law, so we can't receive these funds. If there's someone who's having a hard time right now, it's definitely the CS for Treasury. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that some of these reforms that the World Bank is trying to impose are good for the country? And do you think that the Senate is going to pass this bill?